Hello, my name's AJ Goldsby. I'm a life master from Pensacola, Florida, and I'm coming today to present to you another chess game. And this is a game that was featured pretty recently on the Chess Games website. It was the problem of the day on Friday, February 17th, 2012. And that's how I became interested in this particular chess game. Um, just to let you know, this game is not found in any of the databases. That does not mean that it's fake. It just simply means that there are many of the games in the older magazines. For instance, I have many old issues of Chess Life and Review or Chess Life or other magazines that are now defunct, have gone out of business, like, for example, Inside Chess. But many of the games that are in there are not necessarily found in any of the databases. So, having said all that, this game is not in the chess-based database, but of course, it doesn't mean that it wasn't played or that it's fake. It just means that, for whatever reason, it just wasn't entered into the chess-based database. I will say the chess-based database is pretty good about getting in all the games from the big time, your top 10 GMs and the really big tournaments like Linares, but not so good about getting the games in from other sources. And of course, if someone was ambitious and wanted to do that, certainly getting the old copies of Chess Life and Review and making sure that all those games are transcribed, just the base notation, maybe not necessarily all the annotations, but just getting the base score, PGN score, and submitting these to the databases, that would be a tremendous boon for chess, because I'm sure there's many old games there that are very valuable. Some played between fairly strong players, strong masters, very interesting ideas, but for whatever reason, they've never gotten into the various databases. But anyway, going on to the game too. Oh, I also wanted to let you know that I personally met Grandmaster Shamkovich many years ago, and I may even have his autograph in one of my chess books somewhere. But and I clearly remember when he first came to this country, he defected here with one other Russian chess player, and they did very well when they first came here. In fact, they seemed to win just about all the chess tournaments that they played in. And so anyway, this I decided I would annotate this chess game also and do a video on it, also as like my personal tribute or memorial to Grandmaster Shamkovich. So anyway, let's get to the chess game. It starts off one c4, e5, knight c3, knight c6, knight f3, knight f6. Most of the time, white fianchettos his king bishop. Those would be the main lines of the English opening. But here we have the four knights, and this is one of the most common of all the positions. And again, according to MCO, the Encyclopedia of Chess Openings, and about 5 books that I have on this opening and the Power Book, the main line here is pawn to king knight 3 or g3. Here, Shamkovich chooses a slightly different continuation. He plays 4e3. If I had to guess, I would say that Shamkovich played this to get his opponent away from either what he knew or maybe get him out of main lines and basically throw him on his own resources. Of course, that's just a guess, and Shamkovich is not around today to ask him. Black plays d5. Now, d5, there's nothing wrong with this move. It's certainly a principled move. Idea, in other words, control the center, being one of the most important ideas or principles of the opening. But Botvinnik used to regard this move in the English with a little bit of suspicion, and his logic was very simple: is that if the Sicilian is good for black, then the Sicilian with an extra tempo would be extremely good. I mean, it would be even better. So, having said all that, then I think D5 is not necessarily a bad continuation, but I'm wondering if it's the best. Certainly, it's a well principled continuation. Um, just to show you the alternative here, according to the again Power Book and Encyclopedia of Chess Openings and several, I got a brand new book on the English. I don't even remember who the author is. I haven't had it, but just for a few weeks. But anyway, they all give this line here: Bishop b4, Queen c2, Black castles, Knight d5, Rook e8. They play that very rather unusual move: Queen f5, d6, Knight takes f6, Queen takes f6, Queen takes, G takes f6, 10a3, Bishop c5, 11 b4, Bishop b6. And the engines tend to rate this as pretty close to equal, and I would have to go along with that. Although I will say that white has some practical winning chances because of the slight insecure position of black's king and also the double pawns. And I looked in the database. I found many examples of this game in various databases. And again, and this line would be found in MCO 15, page 682, column number 9. And I do believe this position is not without chances for white. Found many games where grandmasters played from the full point from this position, gained by players like Karpov, Korchnoi, Agdasine, and many others. Probably my favorite would be a game between Tony Miles and Grandmaster Rodriguez Cespedes. And this was a game played in Yopal, Colombia in 1997. Tony Miles won a very sharp game, 1-0 in only 25 moves. Very nice little game. And I am working on a web page on this game, and when that web page is complete, it'll include links to all that, and also a link to that chess game on the Chess Games website. But when I continue on with the actual game, Black played d5 here, and White took c takes d5, Knight takes d5, and now we have a rather curious position. It's kind of like an open Sicilian, but with colors reversed. White plays bishop b5. That's pinning the knight there. That's a good move, a simple move, a consistent move. It's not the main line. Believe it or not, the main line there is e4 for White. And also, too, I would be very tempted there to play a move like backing up here. I might be tempted to play a3 and queen c2 and play kind of like a Lowenthal, Scheveningen, Kahn type of Sicilian, again with an extra tempo. And that would be a very easy position for me to play as White because I've played the Sicilian my whole life. But anyway, White does something a little bit different here. He just simple direct chess. He pins the knight. Also causes Black to worry a little bit about his undefended his pawn here. Now Black here makes a concession. I'm not sure what he should have done or what he could have done. Maybe Queen d6. I'm not really sure here what he could have done to prevent the loss of his pawn here. But Black he plays knight takes c3. There's one drawback to this move is that White recaptures with the b pawn, and now he has a half open b file for his queen's rook, and he also has an extra pawn in the center. White has 1, 2, 3 pawns in the central files, while Black only really has 2 pawns, the e pawn and c pawn, that affect central squares. And now Black plays bishop d6. Of course, that's smooth, consistent development, and also solves the problem of how to protect the Black king pawn. But e4 was a possibility there. And I'll look at that on my webpage. I won't bother with that here. And now after bishop to d6, just backing up, Black played bishop d6. White plays d4. Obviously, that's breaking the center. And now Black plays bishop to d7. To me, that was just a little bit too passive. I mean, it seemed like a fairly decent normal developing move on the face of things. But however, when you examine things a little bit deeper, Black gets into trouble in this game. And one of the reasons he does is because he consistently plays the second or third or whatever best move. He doesn't play the very best move in the position. And it kind of has a cumulative effect. Eventually, it adds up in the long run. A very clear alternative here, what the engine suggests, is the idea here of e4 for White. And then White plays knight d2, and then queen g5. And this Black queen on g5 is attacking the pawn. And both Fritz and Houdini seem to want to play the move bishop f1 there. And of course, if that happens, I think Black's he's getting the better game. He can castle on either side of the board, and he has no worries at all. So maybe that was an improvement over the actual game, and might even resulted in a slight advantage for Black. But again, going back to the game, White played this move, at bishop b5, Black exchanged off the knight, bishop d6, and now d4, and Black plays bishop to d7. The problem with the bishop on d7 is that it's blocking. It's blocking the queen. If a rook ever comes to d8, it'll be blocking the rook. It just seems to get in the way more than anything else. White castles, Black castles. Now White plays a very strange move, a rather unusual move. He plays bishop e2. First, I was very puzzled by that move. It's a rather curious decision, but it's based, I think, on some tactics and the fact that the bishop on b5 is not going to be guarded. And just to show you one line, what could have happened that I think that Grandmaster Shamkovich was trying to avoid was that after e4, that seems to be the natural continuation there. Just play e4, and that you grab some of the center and get the center there. But then Black plays knight takes d4, exclam, knight takes d4, e takes d4, bishop takes d7, queen takes d7, c takes d4. And most of the engines rate this position as equal. White's got a small edge in the center and 2 pawns in the center, but that's completely offset by Black's lead in development and his much more active piece play. And I would say probably the correct result of this position would be either Black wins or White, or more correctly, probably a draw. And that might be that this simplified continuation is exactly why Shamkovich avoided this entire line in the first place. So backing up to the actual game, in this position, White played bishop e2. In other words, White castled, Black castled, and then white played bishop e2. Again, I think it was trying to avoid the possibilities of tactical exploitation of the fact that white's bishop on the b5 square is not protected. And it wasn't a total loss of time because of the fact that now the bishop on e2, white's got an extra pawn in the center, so he has a big pawn center. So the loss of time, I think, is offset by the fact that black's pieces are on somewhat awkward squares, and also, too, that white's got a nice big center there. Black plays rook e8. This is just a nice move, very good move. Putting a rook on, behind the e-pawn. Obviously, the rook on f8 was doing almost nothing. White plays c4 here, and now black plays e takes d4. And that was a key move there. Once more, I think black should have seriously considered maybe e4 in that position. But anyway, he plays e takes d4, e takes d4. And now we have a very curious position. This is known as the hanging pawn or the hanging pawn duo. Normally it occurs in two half-open files. In other words, black would have a half-open d file and a half-open c file. But this is still a hanging pawn duo. And basically it's hanging because there's no pawns to the right or left of this pawn pair in the center. And basically these two pawns depend on pieces for their protection. A lot of players, if they had such a position, they might start willy-nilly just trading pieces at any opportunity, but that's a bad plan because of the fact that these pawns might get weaker as pieces get exchanged off. I am building a web page on this game, and hopefully when I get done, I'll go ahead and post a link to that web page, and you'll be able to take a look at this, and I analyze and discuss some of these ideas in a little bit more detail. Black's next move is bishop g4, sort of pinning the semi-pinning the bishop on the knight on f3 rather, but it's not a total pin because there's the bishop on e2. And white's next move is bishop e3, just guarding the d pawn, developing a piece, and also getting ready to move his queen and connect his rooks. Just solid chess. Queen c6, queen d2, rook e4. Now that move, in my opinion, was a little too dangerous. Fritz, I think, likes RAD8, or rather, I think it's Houdini likes RD8, and Fritz likes b6 there. So those are two alternatives that were both tested, not just 5 minutes, but I mean, I let it run for a couple hours. I also analyzed some lines. I didn't save the lines because it really wasn't that interesting, but it certainly were playable options for black. Again, RAD8 is what Houdini liked, and Fritz 12 likes 14b6. So anyway, going back to the game here, in the game, black played this rook e4. That rook might be slightly exposed there on that e4 square. White plays h3, asking the question of the bishop on h5. Black retreats. Now, black had an interesting alternative, and I'll analyze this on my webpage, but he could have sacked there on h3 and gotten pretty good play and gotten 3 pawns for a piece. A player like Tao might not have hesitated to do that, but either black didn't see that or he just simply wasn't up for that kind of game. He plays bishop h5. White plays rook b1 here. Just natural move, putting a rook on a half-open file, exploiting the fact that this pawn here has no protectors currently. Now, black should probably just play b6 in response. But here, Cespedes, I'm sorry, not Cespedes, G. Lebredo, he's, I believe, a Spanish player. He plays RAE8. But that might be just considered giveaway. Again, the seemingly indicated move, according to the engines, is b6. White has a fairly significant advantage, but nonetheless, I still think that was the correct thing for black to do. Black plays RE8, and of course now white plays rook takes b7. And I'm sure Shamkovich was quite happy. He may even smiled when he took that pawn on b7. I know I would have been happy because, a pawn is a pawn is a pawn. Black has seen some complications coming, but he hasn't quite seen through them as well as white did. He plays bishop f4. White has to play rook b3 there. He has to defend the e3 square. Obviously, after, if bishop takes bishop, rook takes e2 is a total disaster for white because of the threat of bishop takes f3 rupturing white's pawn structure there. Excuse me. I apologize. Anyway, and also, too, if he played some other move, then black can play moves like, for example, if he plays rook takes, well, he can't do that, d5, let's say. Then white simply plays a move like rook takes e3, and if white's not careful, if pawn takes, bishop takes check, and the black queen will be, black will win white's queen. So there's all kinds of ways, and also another bad move would have been bishop d3, just rook takes e3. Again, the same idea, if pawn takes rook, bishop takes check, and white's queen's gone. So when I say rook b3 was forced, I mean it really was forced. Anything else probably would have lost for white. And now black plays rather bishop takes f3. And this move results in a fairly significant downturn in the computer evaluations. I think black had pretty good play there, even though he's a pawn down. Maybe a5 trying to kick this rook off the active b3 square would have been a big improvement over the game. Bishop takes f3, rook takes d4. Of course, white can't play bishop takes rook because of bishop takes queen. There's a little bit of a pin there in this position. But white has a very simple move. He just simply plays queen c2. And now black's got to retreat his rook because there's a very real threat that white might capture. So black plays rook to d6. And now we've reached our position for the problem of the day, the one that was featured on the Chess Games website. And basically, I'm going to tell you to go ahead and, in a minute, let's go ahead and just look at the position. And what I would like you to do now and treat it as a chess problem, pause the video and just say, consider it as a chess problem, white to move and win. Go ahead and pause the video now. Okay, if you did, like I said, you paused the video and were you able to figure out what the correct solution was for white? It's really not that easy. It's a fairly simple continuation once you understand chess. But the idea is you want to create as many hangers as possible and also try to exploit this rook on e8. Black's got a back rank problem here. And that's what white does now. Bishop takes c6, rook takes c6, queen e4. And of course, if rook takes queen, rook b8 check, and black's going to be looking at a back rank mate after he gives away one or two pieces. Okay, here black had no choice, and of course if black does something simple like moves his rook away or doubles his rook here, hitting the queen, white simply plays queen takes bishop on f4, and black loses a piece. Black came up with what he thought was the only move there. He played bishop e5. Looks like the only moves what the engine show is forced, but of course now white simply plays f4, pinning the knight, and because of the unprotected state of the rook on e8, that means this black's going to lose a piece. And here black, of course, decides to go ahead and throw in the towel. That concludes my video on this game, Shamkovich Lebredo, played in Mexico City, 1978. I hope you enjoyed my video. Now, if you really enjoy my videos and you'd like to support both my web pages and my efforts to make really top quality, high quality chess videos, then just go to the website, www.paypal.com, and use my email, lifemasteraj@yahoo.com, and you can make a donation to my account that way. And of course, that's not necessary. I mean, that's only if you want to. That's totally voluntary, of course. But if you enjoyed the video and would like to just say thanks or make a suggestion, I would love to hear from you. Again, my email is lifemasteraj@yahoo.com. And of course, maybe you would like to suggest a game that I could do next time. You have your favorite game of chess and I haven't gotten to it yet. So feel free to write me. Thank you for watching my video and I hope you have a great day.